So we're leading off the fourth installment of our video series with, I guess, what I would call a bling segment. You may have noticed in past videos that some of the hardware doesn't quite look like the stock hardware. And so just to point out what those pieces are going to be, we're looking at some countersunk screws and washers, which mate with some standoffs, and those standoffs meet with more countersunk at the bottom. So you kind of have a, I don't know, it's a little bit of a bling look, I guess. I don't want to overdo it with the red, so this is about it for red on this build. But I kind of like it. I wonder how this looks in the sunlight. By the way, we're I lost you there. We had a battery go out. So just to refresh, we're having a refreshing drink. This is a Lagunitas Special Edition Russian Imperial Stout and a brand new opened container of mixed nuts. So for an old guy like me, yeah, it doesn't get much better than this. I wouldn't put the Russian Imperial Stout up there with Marshal Sukhov or anything like that, but it's certainly up there with like a Sierra Nevada Narwhal or something along those lines. Not bad. It's got some good bite to it, about 10 or 11%. Let me take this outside and see if it's got any more. Oh, and by the way, the prop nuts are also in the same color. So anyway, that's my concession to bling. Kind of had this planned from the beginning. The parts just now coming in from China, and we'll see how those look. But I'm kind of liking that. See how they look in the sunlight. Back in a couple. So it's a little late in the day, and we don't have sunlight right now, but we have indirect light. And that's what we're dealing with. I think these are gonna be a little prettier until I completely nosedive into the side of a mountain and wreck the entire thing. But no, I think these will be a little prettier in the sunlight than they are right now. Kind of liking that. It's the first time I've gone with a countersunk hardware like this. It's kind of nice. Comes up a little bit. Adds some dimension to it, I guess. This is probably completely out of focus, so I totally apologize. It's a setting that I have this thing on right now. It's called Screwed Up Setting That Makes All the Viewers Unhappy setting. Anyway, that's it. Thanks. Alright, so update. I've made a couple decisions. The first being that the video transmitter here is going to actually attach via Velcro to the back of the body plate. So inside the body mount, actually that's going to be covered like so. So it's going to be inside, and directly underneath that will be the actual inspection plate, which is right there. So when I take this plate off to get to the flight controller, I'm going to have to take this off, or, you know, somehow loosen it up a little bit. And maybe by loosening it, oh, I guess I gotta take the screws off. But so the idea, I guess, is the idea would be to undo the screw spool. The idea for the flight controller would be to, I guess, move it, you know. That way I could access the flight controller that's there. This cable doesn't interfere with anything, so we're pretty good there. That's the first piece. So the good part about that is it's actually bound to the body. The cables are up front, and once I put the chassis back together, this piece will slide over, and the guts of the control system is going to be in here. As you can see, the flight controller is actually mounted to the board right now. That actually goes just like that. And so if I was to flip it over, it's that cavity right there that we're speaking to back here. So we're going to try to get everything into the chassis right here. I'll probably mount, well, let's just talk about that. The second idea was to mount the GPS to the back. Let's flip her over. Have a look at that. So we're on like a Velcro right here, but it's pretty on there. And then the cable I'm running concurrently. You can kind of see this with the wire that comes from the signal on this particular 100 amp current sensor. So I'm taking those two cables and I'm running them together. I'm going to run them through this cable right here. I'm running them through this. But as you can see, it's kind of a tight fit. So when I plug in the power, the XT60 on this, it fits perfect, but you know, there's some tight tolerances right there between, you know, those two cables and the actual XT60 connector. But this cable is going to run, you know, to the front of the chassis where I'm going to put my TBS Core. That TBS Core is going to be pretty much right there. It's going to be mounted to this plate in the front of the chassis. So we need all the cables to be there anyway. The cam is up front, the video cam. All the connectors to the OSD and the entire core are going to need to kind of come together in this small area, which is why I put the video transmitter there. So I've got the cam up here, the transmitter here, and the wires coming in from the GPS and the current sensor also there. We're going to have the receiver mounted up front here too. We'll get into that later. That's the L9R, and the actual cords from that are going to go into the core as well for RSSI. Anyway, that's kind of the look with where we have it right now, and it's coming along. It's kind of like mostly planning and less doing. So I just spent like the last 2 hours, you know, planning, and then 30 minutes braiding the cable and putting everything and routing everything up there. So it's kind of like plan everything out and then, you know, hope that it all comes together. But right now this is looking pretty good. The only problem I can see here with this idea is I cannot change the channel on the video transmitter without actually, you know, separating the Velcro and pulling that off. That is in the middle of the entire body. It's not going to be easy to get to. So if I'm out there flying and I need to change channels, and I must change channels, I'm going to have to start to disassemble the quad to get to this, because it's right in the middle of the whole thing. And that's a weakness in my opinion, but it's a tight, you know, compartment. It's all got to get in there somehow. So that's the update. You know, we'll probably, as far as wire routing goes, I might attach those to this, or maybe what I'll do is I'll just take, you know, something like a wire wrap. You know, I'll take a wire wrap and then I'll have a guide so it can go through the wire wrap. So who knows how we're going to do that. I want to make it flexible, but at the same time, this is kind of a permanent design choice, and I don't see this moving. This cable comes up to the front, and these puppy ears are going to be in place. They're not going to move. So that's pretty much it. The other side of this that I see that's a negative is I believe I'm going to have to mount this to the actual plate. You can see this is a busy plate anyway. I'm going to be putting it right there. And that means if I want to disassemble things, then that cable or whatever is mounted to that OSD has to come with it. Okay, so I got to be able to peel that back together as a unit. Otherwise, I'm in big trouble. I don't want to have to take wires apart to get at this thing. That's one of my design objectives anyway. So that's the good news. The bad news is I was like in my my office here, and I'm walking through, and I just walk over and I notice that this little bolt right there is sitting on the floor. You ever had this? On the carpet. And it's like, that could have come off any one of my models. That's a scary thing. So it's like sitting over there by my models, and here's this lonely little nut. And just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, it's like coming off of one of those. So that's not good. Anyway, that's the update, and hit you up later when we make some more progress. Thanks. And that's what it looks like with the flight controller cover, inspection cover pulled aside, and all the servo wires hooked up. So, you know, it's a mess. I've got 2 extension cables here and here, because it just connects, and if I'm ever going to pull these legs out to collapse and make it portable, then it will never go. And you know, this is just as tight as it gets. I mean, this cover, it doesn't interfere with anything when it goes back. The one cable that's down there, this extension cable, you know, for the jack, that thing doesn't really collide with anything. It's not pushing hard up against stuff, but it's not exactly a friendly fit either. And you can just see it looks actually worse than it is. But you can see the video transmitter, you know, back there, and its little spot in this. It's completely out of focus. Apologize. And yeah, it's just not getting any better than that. You know, if you look at the underside, it's pretty clean. So we're happy, but I don't know, it's a little bird's nest in there. Wish that was better, but it's not. So the next thing I'm doing is pulling apart the plug-and-play TBS Core Pro so that I can do some soldering. Get this, right about where that screwdriver ends, I've got to jumper this, and that's probably too blurry, but not much I can do about it. I got to jumper this thing because the factory settings specify that the video camera is a 12 volt unit and the VTX, the transmitter, is a 5 volt unit. Get a load of those voltage settings printed right there on the old cables. So the factory actually has it backwards. You know, how many video transmitters are 5 volts? None. How many, you know, not that many. And how many cams are 12 volts? Okay, a lot. But there's still, you know, a lot of cams getting their 5 volts from the VTX. So why couldn't they have just made those the factory defaults? No clue. But I thought I was done with soldering, and I am not. Fun, fun, fun. So, update. I am not going to go into the TBS plug-and-play core and desolder the whole thing. I thought about it, but I think it's stupid. And here's why. And here's my idea instead. So, in the documentation it says, oh, by the way, it's a good idea if the TBS Core Pro is working with a ImmersionRC video transmitter, that this transmitter get its power directly off of the battery and not from the actual Core Pro. So I got to thinking, what I'm going to do is I am going to take right off the battery, I am going to run, you know, a JST balance adapter lead off of this to a filter. Okay, so this is the power filter for a Fat Shark 12 volt video transmitter, and I'm going to power that directly off of the balance lead and run a power cable right to the video transmitter. So the transmitter is going to get power right off the battery, and then off the harness that comes off, I am only going to run video, and I'm going to run video directly into the Core Plug-and-Play Pro, and I'm going to take and let it do 12 volts. So I'm not going to touch the internals. It's not going to use the 5 volts that's on the VTX side, but it will use the 12 volts and send 12 volts to the cam. The cam is capable of handling 12 volts. Matter of fact, this is a 12 volt board cam, so it's going to work out very well. And so my feeling on this is that this is a better solution than me opening up the case on this thing and then, you know, soldering those solder jumpers, because I am terrible at soldering. And we're going to run with this. This is the solution that I'm going to go with rather than the others. A little more cables obviously in the picture, but whatever. Anyway, that's the solution rather than the other. Update.